Section 31's place in Star Trek's timeline explained. What it means for TNG and Picard. Star Trek, Section 31's exact placement in Star Trek's timeline is now clear, and here's what it means for Star Trek: The Next Generation. Directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi and written by Craig Sweeney, Star Trek, Section 31 is now streaming on Paramount+. Headlined by Academy Award winner Michelle, who is back as her fan-favorite anti-heroine, Emperor Philippa Georgiou from Star Trek Discovery, Section 31 is the first Star Trek movie in 9 years and the first Star Trek movie made for streaming on Paramount+. Emperor Philippa Georgiou's last appearance was in Star Trek Discovery Season 3, when the Guardian of Forever Paul Guilfoyle judged whether the former despot of the Mirror Universe's Terran Empire had sufficiently changed. The Guardian of Forever sent Georgiou to an unknown destination where the Prime and Mirror universes were more closely aligned, as they were broken apart in Star Trek Discovery's 32nd Century. Georgiou reappeared somewhere in the mid-24th century Lost era of Star Trek. Thankfully, Star Trek Section 31 wastes no time defining when exactly the movie takes place. Star Trek Section 31 establishes that its main story takes place on Stardate 1292.4. On the Gregorian calendar, this converts to April 17, 2324. This means Section 31 is set 40 years before Star Trek The Next Generation, which begins in 2364 with its 2-hour premiere, Encounter at Farpoint. Star Trek Section 31 is also the first full-length Star Trek adventure set in the 24th century Lost era, which TNG has only referenced a handful of times with flashbacks and in the Star Trek The Next Generation Classic Season 3 episode, Yesterday's Enterprise. However, Star Trek Section 31 also contains flashbacks to the mirror universe of the early 23rd century. Given that Star Trek Discovery establishes that Emperor Georgiou lost control of the Terran Empire and jumped to the Prime universe in 2257, Star Trek Section 31's flashbacks to how the young Philippa Georgiou Miku Martineau became Emperor take place sometime in 2210s or early 2220s if Georgiou is in her 50s as an adult and young Philippa is in her late teens. Star Trek Section 31's main story takes place over the course of one day since Control Jamie Lee Curtis establishes that Section 31's Alpha Team, led by Alok Sahar Omari Hardwick, had 24 hours to recruit Emperor Georgiou and find and capture the Godsend weapon. Finally, Star Trek Section 31's epilogue flashes forward to 3 weeks later, where Georgiou reveals that she received an offer to formally rejoin Section 31, and Control gives them marching orders for the team's next mission. Jean-Luc Picard is arguably the most important Starfleet figure of 24th century Star Trek, and the future captain of the Enterprise is definitely alive during Star Trek Section 31. Jean-Luc Picard was born in 2305, and he joined Starfleet Academy in 2323 to pursue his dream of exploring the stars and to escape the childhood trauma of his broken home as established by Star Trek Picard Season 2. In Star Trek Section 31's 2324 timeframe, Jean-Luc Picard is a 19-year-old sophomore at Starfleet Academy. Virtually all of the established canon of Jean-Luc Picard's Starfleet career is still to come after Star Trek Section 31. Picard will be stabbed through the heart in a bar fight with Nausicaaans and receive an artificial heart. Jean-Luc will become captain of the USS Stargazer, and Picard will become legendary for commanding the USS Enterprise D&E. Star Trek Section 31 never references Jean-Luc Picard, but Star Trek fans know Captain Picard will eventually meet one key Star Trek Section 31 character. In the sprawling tapestry of Star Trek, woven with hope, exploration, and diplomacy, there exists a shadowy thread, Section 31. An organization cloaked in mystery and moral ambiguity, Section 31 has long been the Federation's dirty secret, the necessary evil behind its utopia. But understanding where Section 31 fits in the timeline isn't just about chronology, it's about ideology. And its implications ripple through the eras of the Next Generation and Picard, raising haunting questions about what the Federation is and what it's willing to become. Origins in the shadows. Section 31 was first mentioned in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, but chronologically, its roots date back to the 22nd century. In Star Trek Enterprise, we see that Section 31 already exists in the pre-Federation days. It's not just a response to outside threats, it's built into the very DNA of the Federation's founding charter, specifically Article 14, Section 31 of the Starfleet Charter. It operates independently, outside of oversight, answering only to itself. This means that from the moment the Federation began reaching for the stars, someone was already watching from the shadows, someone ready to act when ideals fell short, when the threat was too great, or when the truth was too dangerous. The DS9 era, the mask slips. It wasn't until Deep Space Nine that Section 31 stepped into the light, albeit briefly and ominously. As the Dominion War raged, the Federation, the symbol of peaceful cooperation and moral high ground, found itself on the brink of destruction. Enter Section 31, unapologetically manipulating events to preserve the status quo. From attempting to blackmail Dr. Bashir into joining their ranks to infecting the Founders with a genocidal virus, Section 31 made it clear, the ends justify the means. Here, the duality of the Federation is laid bare. On the surface, it's a utopia. Underneath, a compromise. A cold calculation. It's in this era that the audience begins to ask, is the Federation's purity a facade? Or worse, a fantasy protected by those willing to do the unthinkable? The TNG era echoes in the silence. During the Next Generation, Section 31 is notably absent, at least in name. But its influence is arguably felt in the undercurrents of the show. While Captain Picard champions diplomacy and moral clarity, there are hints of a darker force operating behind the scenes. Consider Admiral Pressman's illegal cloaking device in The Pegasus, or the conspiracy-laden episode Conspiracy. The machinery of the Federation is not as pristine as it seems. Why doesn't Section 31 reveal itself in TNG? Perhaps it's because the galaxy is relatively at peace. Or perhaps Section 31 is simply better at hiding. The utopia of TNG is aspirational, but the foundation might still be resting on compromises we don't see. The silence isn't absence. It's camouflage. The Picard era, when shadows return. By the time we reach Star Trek Picard, the cracks are no longer subtle. The Federation is weary and trust in its institutions has eroded. Synthetic life is banned, the Romulan evacuation was mishandled, and the galaxy is turning inward. Though Section 31 isn't a central player in Picard yet, the themes align too closely to ignore. The events of Star Trek Discovery, which feature a very active and visible Section 31 in the 23rd century, also cast a long shadow over the future. With Starfleet intelligence agencies still operating in the background and mysterious figures like Commodore O and Picard, it's clear that the philosophy of Section 31, ruthless pragmatism in the name of order, never left. Picard, once the embodiment of Starfleet's conscience, is now a relic in a world flirting with fear and control. If Section 31 is no longer lurking, it's only because their methods have been absorbed into policy. What it all means. Section 31 forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about the Federation. Utopias don't build themselves. For every shining starship exploring new worlds, there may be a shadow agent ensuring it can do so. In TNG, the dream still held. In Picard, that dream is fraying. Yet there's power in these contrasts. They don't diminish the vision of Star Trek, they enrich it. They remind us that holding to ideals is hardest when they're most at risk. That the greatest challenge isn't creating a perfect future, but defending it without becoming what you fear. As Star Trek continues to evolve, Section 31 remains its moral litmus test, the dark mirror to its brightest hopes. And whether lurking in the past or waiting in the future, Section 31 will always ask the question, how far are you willing to go to protect paradise? Let me know if you want to expand this into a script, essay format, or add references to specific episodes or characters. As Star Trek continues to evolve, Section 31 remains its moral litmus test, the dark mirror to its brightest hopes. And whether lurking in the past or waiting in the future, Section 31 will always ask the question,